Somebody told me that.
It's true.
I know. I mean, that's sad, but nice. Even longer since it's been Susan that said that to me.
Call me anytime.
Last time you said that to me, I was in white tights about to perform in Romeo and Juliet as one of the knights.
Yes.
Which we don't have to talk about. We don't have to talk about that.
Well, you could say, you know, what your favorite roles were. Your favorite roles.
Okay. That was definitely the most different that I've been in.
All right. We have the green light. So welcome everyone. My name is Susan Stowe, and I'm a professor of dance in the Conservatory of Performing Arts at Point Park University. And I happen to be celebrating my 25th year of teaching. And I'm really excited to have with me 4 of our alumni who are all successful dancers doing different work in different cities. And I was so lucky to get to work with them while they were students, and they're terrific people. And I'm just so pleased and proud to be here on Zoom with them. So I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves and tell us when they graduated and where they're living now, and perhaps a little bit about how they got where they're going, where they are now. So, and anyone in the audience who has a question, please type it into the chat and we'll be sure to answer it as best we can. So who would like to go first? Tell us who you are, where you're from, how you got where you are, year of graduation. All right, Kenny, you're up.
Okay, I'll go first. So I attended Point Park as a modern concentration. I was scheduled to graduate in 2013. However, I ended up leaving early. I took a job with Rasa Thomas's Bad Boys of Dance. I toured internationally for, I think, like 5 years before I was like, okay, I need to finish my credits and graduate. So a couple summers ago, I think it was 2018, I eventually graduated Point Park, but it was kind of nice that those credits were still there. I could come back to them and finish out my degree. I think I had a math class online, which was tough. And then I had an English class left. So not too bad. And like I said, I started touring internationally with this company for about 5 years. Then I moved to New York to start freelancing. Once I moved to New York, I started a show called Queen of the Night, which is kind of like an immersive theater show, similar to Sleep No More. And ever since, kind of just, I won't share my whole story, I guess now, but that's kind of what led me to moving to the city.
Thank you, Kenny.
Yeah.
All right, who would like to go next? I know you guys all have interesting stories.
Colin?
I'll go. I'm Colin Jacob. I graduated from Point Park in 2015. I was supposed to actually graduate, I think, in 2016, but I finished early to go dance at Ballet West in Salt Lake City. I danced there for 1 season, and then I moved to the opposite side of the country for Columbia City Ballet in South Carolina, which I was a demi soloist at. And then after that, I moved up to Norfolk, Virginia, where I am a company artist with Ballet Virginia. And actually starting tomorrow, I am a guest artist with Richmond Ballet.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. So auditioning over Zoom was certainly an experience. So let's hope we don't have to do that much longer, but at least it worked out in my favor.
Oh, that's great. Could you elaborate a little bit on how you did your audition on Zoom? I mean, did they have criteria that they wanted to see?
So it was like just sending your normal audition reel, that kind of thing. But they got back to me very quickly, and originally I was supposed to meet with them in March, and then they had some openings in their company. So they needed men immediately. So they were like, hey, I know you were auditioning in a month, but why don't you audition in 2 days? I was like, oh, okay. So fortunately, because I've been in Virginia, I've been able to dance through the pandemic. The first 6 months we were all laid off, but we're back in the studio now and rehearsing, and have been since the beginning of the year, but masks always. not a lot of live performances. Majority of the time they're just filmed. But after I sent my stuff in, we did a normal Zoom class and they hired me soon after.
That's great. Congratulations again.
Thank
That's
you.
really terrific. Are you doing any partnering at all? Or is it Dutch?
So they have very specific COVID rules. We have to stay in pods. I had to sign that I wouldn't go to restaurants or bars or anything other than the grocery store or necessities. As of right now, I think I'm in a duet section with one other person who I'm living with, but I think that's it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah,
like you
gotta
said,
stay safe.
hopefully this will be over soon.
Yes, I hope so.
All right, Carlos and Amanda.
Okay. Hey, I'm Amanda. I graduated in December 2012. I graduated a semester early. I was a ballet BFA. And right after school, I started working with Texture Contemporary Ballet there in Pittsburgh. I had worked with Alan Obazor, the director at Point Park for Pittsburgh Connections one year, and he invited me to join the company right when I graduated, so that was really cool. And then I did that for about a year or so, and then I took a quick contract with Royal Caribbean, actually, and then I moved back to Pittsburgh, and then came to New York City, and I've been doing like freelance contemporary ballet work for the past 5 years. I work with 3 to 4 main companies, and then also do some like freelance choreographic stuff too.
So you're choreographing, or you're having
No, I
choreography?
work with some like independent choreography,
Got it.
things like that.
Okay, that's awesome. And do you you're in the studio rehearsing, doing these things, or on Zoom?
Well, we haven't done anything for the past year. Unfortunately, everything has kind of stopped here. Me and Kenny did one virtual show in December for Sheep Meadow Dance Theater. We got to be in the studio a little bit then, but other than that, a lot has actually kind of stopped in terms of freelance stuff. So we're just trying to stay in shape by doing class here. And I have a full-time job at Yumiko, so I also give myself class there, which is nice to have that space.
Yeah. All right, Carlos.
Hi, so I'm Carlos Jimenez. I was at Point Park class of 2015, but I graduated a semester early in December of 2014. And I was a modern concentration. I have a BA in modern with a minor in musical theater. So I took a lot of vocal classes or singing for dancers as prerequisites in college because I've always identified as a musical theater dancer, but I did become a dance major at Point Park because I wanted to train a little harder in ballet and get some more technique under my belt before hitting New York or some bigger auditions for some heavy shows. I left Pittsburgh. I think I'm from New Jersey, and my family lives both in New Jersey and in Morovis, Puerto Rico, so I'm Puerto Rican. And let's see, I did cruise ships for about 3 years. That was like my first professional jobs after college for Holland America Cruise Line through RWS Entertainment Group. They're a production company here in the city, and they are kind of entertainment. They produce entertainment for a bunch of different companies like cruise lines or theme parks around the country, and they also work internationally. They have a bunch of departments, but their home base is here in New York. So I used to rehearse a lot here, and then was sent out on various cruise ships for a couple years. It was good money, got to travel, which was such a blessing. And then came back to New York, kind of wanting to hit musical theater a little harder again. And I was working, auditioning in New York for about a year, nothing really crazy until I got an agent. That kind of got my foot in the door for a couple of shows in the city, some regional theaters and things like that. Got recognized a lot through casting agencies here in the city until I was booked doing regional theater all of 2019. I traveled to Milwaukee, to Florida, to Chicago, Michigan, some other places, and then was fortunate enough to work with a few choreographers here in the holidays of 2019 into 2020. Right before the pandemic hit in January, I booked my first Broadway show. I was a Shark Swing on the West Side Story revival which was a dream come true. It was something I wanted since I was like 5, singing and dancing in my parents' kitchen. And yeah, so it was great. I had done West Side Story a few times. I identify as a Latinx, singer dancer. So it is a wonderful story about immigration and sort of racial inequality. If none of you know what West Side Story is, I'd be a little surprised. But she's a classic. But yeah, so the pandemic shut down Broadway on March 12th, I believe was the Broadway shutdown of 2020, as many of you guys probably have known. And done not much since, gotta say. I work a part-time job now in the city, trying to just make some money. And I do also some freelance work. So I sing, I'm doing a vocal gig this week. An artistic director for certain venues are always looking for small, more intimate performances or shows. So, because of some of the networking I got to do in the last 2 years or 3 in the city, I was able to sort of get little things here and there. But just trying to stay busy, like Amanda said, taking class once in a blue in my living room, or yeah, just kind of waiting it out here in the city.
Thank you, Carlos. Any idea, is there any talk about when their Broadway may reopen? That shows may start rehearsing again?
Yeah, so last year when the pandemic first hit, we got emails periodically, maybe from the Broadway League or the Actors Equity Union, which I joined last year. And they were just as unsure as most people, throughout of a timeline. They kept pushing back a Broadway opening date. As of right now, some of the producers, I can only speak for the show that I'm a part of, for West Side Story. They were still, backed by or financially from the producers, and they still hope to open the show. I know, unfortunately, a lot of Broadway shows or a few had to close. But as of right now, it's opening date tentatively in September or the fall of this year. So the plan is to open some Broadway shows sporadically, maybe 2 at a time, so that there isn't such heavy competition between shows when theater can start to house some audiences.
Yeah, well, we're all looking forward to that. That's for sure. Can't wait. Can't wait. It's been too long. So why don't each of you tell us a little bit about, how you're taking care of yourself physically, mentally, spiritually during this time, given that you're dancing in your living room and trying to stay in some kind of shape, is there anything you could give advice to our students, if they end up back dancing in their bedroom, anything that you found that is very helpful. I found yoga. I love it. I'm really into yoga now. And so that's kind of helped me get through all of this and stay in a little bit of better shape. But maybe Kenny, could you tell us what you're doing? Because you can't really go to the gym, right?
Right. You can now, but I was never really that into the gym before the pandemic. I do partying a lot, so I lift girls, and that's like, I'm like, I don't need to lift weights. But before all of this happened, I've always had kind of back problems. They weren't so bad in college, but as soon as I joined a company and started doing a lot of partnering, a lot of lifting, it really started to affect me. I ended up slipping a disc a few summers back. So I got into PT at Harkness, which is a great place in the city. It was completely free for 8 or 10 weeks, which was amazing. But I was doing that, and I'm combining it with Bikram yoga. So that was really helping my back as well. And when the pandemic hit, obviously gyms and yoga studios closed, and I was a really big fan of hot yoga. But at first, the first month, it was kind of just devastating. I took it hard and kind of just let myself be for a month while everyone was getting into the Zoom classes. I was a little late to that. But then I was like, okay, I want to get back in shape and I need to do something. And I thought of Sean T's and Sandy Max 30, which I've never tried before in my life. But I have to say, like, if I was dancing, I would never have tried this workout. I never knew that I was a fan of HIIT cardio. So I've been doing that, like, I started like in May or April or May. So I've been doing that a lot. I've been dancing too, but my old apartment was a studio and there was really no place to dance. So I had just recently moved to one bedroom, had a little bit more space. The floors are incredibly hard. So, you know, jumping is hard on my back as well. So it's like, you have to find this like common ground of, okay, like I was working out outside a lot and now I'm like in my apartment and I'm like, okay, I have to like take it easy with these jumps and stuff. So I've been doing like a little bit more ballet bar as well. And it's just, I have to say, a crazy time to be alive. 2 weeks ago, I was doing a virtual dance lab. Josh Prince is Broadway choreographer. I've done a live dance lab 2 other times. And so this one was called Nexus Virtual Dance Lab of New York. And basically how it works is you work with one choreographer at a time. Usually the whole thing lasts 4 weeks with 4 different choreographers, but they're kind of experimenting. I was part of like the guinea pig process of like how this was gonna run back in the summer. So I was fortunate enough to work with a great choreographer. John Malik was his name. He's done a ton of things with A-League complexions. And so it was really interesting. I'm at the studio I teach at currently, fortunate enough to be teaching right now as well. But I was in a studio from 12 to 5 p.m. by myself on Zoom. And it was a really interesting process because, you know, when you're in a studio with dancers, you feed off their energy. And I was kind of wondering how that would go. And it felt like I wasn't alone in a studio a lot of the time until we went and took a 5-minute break. I'm like, oh, wow, I'm like completely alone in this building right now. But I have to say it was so unique in the fact that you didn't feel alone. You actually felt like you were collaborating with dancers. And the first day we learned like 6 minutes of choreography. And I cannot tell you the last time I learned that much choreography in like one rehearsal setting. And so I was a little overwhelmed at first, especially learning through Zoom is, you know, a beast of its own. But I feel like every day felt a little bit more normal. And it was just great to see how other dancers interpret the same choreography. And it's just something that like you really take for granted when you're in a studio with very talented dancers. So yeah, that's a little bit of what I've been doing.
That's great. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So sort of on the other side or the flip side of the coin. So Colin, you are actually in the studio, right? Mm-hmm. So
yes.
Are you doing anything to supplement your work in the studio?
We do have shows that we've been able to get ready for and prepare for, which has been nice. But I feel like this is the first time I've realized that at any moment the studio could get taken away. So we are so lucky to have it. So I do spend a lot of extra time there that I never really would have doing things like, oh, I'm just going to learn a variation today. That's not something I would regularly do. But I think if I don't spend the time there, I might lose it. So I think I have taken for granted that I even now still have a studio because so many people do not. But we do have a gym attached here to our apartment that you have to sign out for. You have to wear a mask for. It's a very complicated process and it fills up very quickly. So maybe I'll get like 30 minutes a day, if that, but that counts for something. Otherwise, it's myself, my husband, and our cats trying to work out in here, and that's not gonna work. So yeah, I have come to find, I think the biggest thing that I've had to start to worry about would be cardio with wearing a mask and performing. I was able to do a nutcracker guesting, and I didn't realize how hard it was to do partnering in a mask until you're lifting someone wearing a mask and the tutu is also over your face. Now you can't breathe or see.
Oh.
So it's kind of like, I don't think I realized how hard it was going to be wearing a mask to dance like that when it affects your partnering, it affects your breathing, it affects pretty much every ounce of what you do. But I think the best part about being a dancer is being adaptable. So you kind of make it a part of who you are now. But anything other than being in the studio in the short periods, I try not to go out that much or, do anything extra because, well, obviously safer not to. But best I can do is use the studio when I can. But even then, we try to limit the time as teachers for our contract here in the studio because we don't want to make kids feel uncomfortable. And we've adapted a hybrid learning system. So in addition to, I get to go in and teach the kids, but I have to have Zoom on all the time always because some students still don't feel comfortable coming in. I did take students to YGP as I did YGP when I was at Point Park this past year. And I was so amazed that the admiration of these young students to do that well and perform the way that they did with masks on and travel, and it's crazy. So good for the dance community because I feel like we're still making it work, even if it's not the capacity we would like it to be.
Yes, and congratulations to you. That's amazing.
Thank you.
That you were able to perform with the mask and everything. I mean, I know I can say that at Point Park, that's what we're doing too. We have smaller classes, everyone's masked, and some students are remote. So they're coming in through, we use Teams, which is like Zoom. So as a teacher, you're looking at a screen, you're looking at the people in front of you. So it's kind of back and forth, but it's working. And like you say, we're adaptable, and maybe more so than a lot of occupations. We're able to think on our feet, so to speak, and make it work.
Yep.
So that's really, really neat and good for you and all that. Funny thing, a quick story about the whole mask thing. So we were performing when I was with Pittsburgh Ballet Theater. We were doing a tour of the Western United States, and we performed in like Laramie, Wyoming, and Prescott, Arizona, and those are really high elevations. So it was like wearing 5 masks because there was no air up there, and we were doing, the whole balancing repertoire. And I just remember wishing that they had an oxygen tent or something because there was no air. It was just so thin because of the elevation. So I feel your pain. I remember what that was like, and our current students, what they're going through.
Yep.
It's tough. All right. How about Amanda? Would you like to share?
I will say it can be really difficult. When this first started, I was taking class every single day, like just ballet in our apartment. And then gradually, as the months progressed, it just became harder and harder to stay motivated. I do feel grateful that I have a full-time job, though, that really kept me going. Like every day having something to do for a set amount of hours, it was a blessing. Because you need something to keep your mind stimulated. It can get hard, especially when you're unemployed and sitting at home. It's just a difficult situation all around. And I think it's good to note that everyone is just trying to do their best, but it can be hard. And now, like I said, I just do class at Yumiko. I do some like stretching, abs, burpees, trying to get a little bit of the cardio going. But until the studios open back up here in Manhattan, it's pretty difficult, I have to say. Just waiting for the studios to open. I can't wait. I don't think I've done a grand jeté in a year.
Wow.
Isn't that insane?
And that's the best part, right? Grand jetés, tour jetés, flying through the air.
That definitely was my favorite. Not Petite Allegro. I can't say that was
same.
I've actually heard of people getting small trampolines and jumping like that for cardio.
Oh.
Okay, I'll have to ask my neighbors how they feel about that first.
Right. Well, that's the other piece of it. If you're making noise in your apartment and the people below you typically are the ones that, they get put off because you're making a lot of noise banging around.
Right.
So that's a challenge too. So are you doing anything in addition to just like Zoom classes, Carlos, or you?
I honestly, when the pandemic first hit, I was kind of the opposite of Kenny, maybe the first 2 months, which I'll preface by saying what he did was probably better. My first like 2 months afterwards, I just was still coming off of that high of like having, the job that I always wanted and wanting to stay in shape and wanting to not let it get to me, So I think I was doing I downloaded the Nike training app, and they were doing this promotion that I saw advertised where you could do free like 6-week programs and, you know, do at-home workouts. So I bought bands, I bought a new mat. I was filling up tote bags with boots and stuff to make makeshift weights, and I was doing it. I mean, I was working out. I felt like I was staying in shape and doing really well. After some time, like Amanda said, it got harder to stay motivated. They kept pushing the date back of when they thought we were gonna, return, and it became really hard to for a moment to really see the point in staying motivated. So then I took maybe a few months off before doing anything. I didn't do any classes. I did some yoga here and there. Like, I think it just made me feel good to stretch in general. And I would stretch, but I wouldn't necessarily take classes. And then there was a point, I guess, I think it was when I started reading this novel or this book that has been around for about 30 years called The Artist's Way. And it's sort of a course, a 12-week course where that restarts or kickstarts your creativity again. And it was kind of in my radar. I kept hearing a lot of people talking about it. So honestly, like, it got me writing a lot. And it was sort of, I read a lot in my life. I've always read a lot of books and loved to read, but I wasn't always a writer. I didn't always journal or write a lot of things. So when I started doing that for this course I was taking, just to kind of like help myself through whatever I was feeling emotionally, it got me wanting to dance more. It got me wanting to sing more. It got me, so I think it's all connected for me, and maybe for a lot of people. When I started to write down and sort of get it all out, what I was feeling, I felt lighter, and I felt a little better about everything that's happened. So that sort of got me working out again, little by little, because like Kenny, I always had like little back issues here and there, and taking that much time off and hitting like workouts and dance classes again, my body was like, what are you doing? This is not for you anymore. But you try to reason with yourself, and I think I'm doing better now. I feel a lot more like myself lately that I've been doing that. So, and things just started opening up a little bit in the city, and like I said, different venues, little things. So because I think I've been putting myself out there more, people have reached out, and now I'm able to sing with some people socially distanced, or be a part of certain choreographers' workshops, things like that for the Broadway Direct, which has been really nice. And like Amanda said, something to keep my mind kind of stimulated. And lists throughout all last year, what I did was make a list for myself every morning. Or every night, I'd make a list for the next day. And I'd always fill it with things that I was gonna do anyway, just so I had something to cross off that I knew, like, but I would always do one thing, especially during quarantine. One of them was like one thing for my house. I would clean like one room or something like that. And then I'd do one thing for myself artistically, like sing a song for my book, or stretch, and at the end of the day, I'd be able to see visually everything I accomplished that day when I went to make my next list. And that was my way of staying mentally stimulated, like feeling productive.
Oh, that's great advice. Everybody should make a list.
Make a list. And then my first one was always coffee. Make coffee and make your bed. And then I do those anyway. So it was always nice. Be like, okay, I started off with some momentum. And it was nice. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. This is very interesting. And thank you so much for sharing. So do you guys have any fond memories of your time at Point Park, or a story? It could be a funny story, or I guess a sad story, or something interesting, or maybe a connection that you made that's helped you professionally through your time at Point Park? Anything like that? Kenny's going, yes.
Yeah, I'll go. I think one of my fondest memories at Point Park was getting the chance to go to perform at the Joyce Theater. Garfield Lamonius had choreographed a piece that we took to the Joyce for a performance called Destiny Rising, NYCDA hosted. And it was, I mean, I haven't gotten to perform at the Joyce since, and I never had before that. So that was an amazing opportunity to be able to have while still in school. And I didn't know at the time, but Garfield had already took me aside and was like, oh, just so you know, Rasta Thomas will be there if you want me to introduce you to him. And I was like, yes, I would love that. So right after the performance, I got to meet him, and I didn't know it at the time, but they were holding an audition shortly after that, which I wasn't able to attend because we were doing finals at the time. And so I sent in like a dance reel, not thinking anything was going to come of it, but something came of it, and I got the job. So I think that for me is the biggest thing that sticks out. But another thing too, like Amanda just was mentioning texture contemporary ballet, like that was my first ever professional job at school. So Alan Abuzar came to set a piece, and then he hired a bunch of us for, I forget the name of the show, but it was New Year's Eve. You remember that one? Yeah. So that was really cool. Just like getting to dance professionally while you still feel like a student, but it was kind of eye-opening to be like, okay, this is what it's like to be a professional or part of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I remember that trip to the Joyce, and I remember we were sweating trying to find, it was a huge cast. I want to say it was like 16 or 18 dancers in the piece. And we were trying to find a restaurant in New York that could seat all of you so you could eat before the show. Yeah. That was a challenge, but we
remember succeeded. You got slipped the bill at the very end.
Right. Yeah. But it was definitely worth it, and it was so much fun. And to see all of you up there was so rewarding and just so inspiring, because you did not hold back. That was an amazing performance. I remember we even got a review in the Washington Post or something about how beautiful it was and how talented you all were. So,
which like I said, I had never performed at the Joyce before. I had no idea that backstage was 2 staircases. So if you have a crossover, you have to go downstairs and then upstairs. Which that was like, I feel like it was like a lot of cardio in that piece. And I was like, okay, wow, this is intense, but a lot of fun.
Totally. All right, who else has a story for us?
I can go. So my freshman year at Point Park, I was very fortunate to be cast in a piece that some of the fellow Zoomers on here were a part of, for Enemy Behind the Gates with Christopher Huggins. Now, I think that was a very interesting experience for me, as I really had not danced very long before I had come to Point Park. The most I had done before I started as an actual student at Point Park was do Point Park Summer Intensive, and that was about it. So I was only dancing for a few months before I came there the summer beforehand, before my senior year of high school. And I learned so much, and I was so prepared. And then I came to school, and I finally was working with a real choreographer, and I felt so fortunate because I saw how hard everyone was working to get in this piece. And I remember that audition process went on for multiple days, and it just kept going. He would let a few people go and this and that. And I just remember that being a really hard process for me, because he was like, oh, okay, so you'll learn this part, but then other people were cast, so they were in another piece and would leave, and he was like, oh, but you should learn all of these roles too. So I felt like I was understudying every single person, and I think it really helped me in the future in the long run. But I say this in the sense that the resident choreographer of the company I'm with now danced with Christopher and Alvin Ailey. So she was playing a piece of music, and I was like, why do I know that? And it happened to be that same piece of music. And I was like, oh, I danced in that piece in college. And she was like, oh, that piece is so beautiful. You're so fortunate. Was it such a great experience? And I was like, actually, it was really hard on me. It was really difficult for me, but I think it helped shape. And she was like, well, Christopher has some very, he wants what he wants and wants it right then. So I will never forget that as being one of the hardest things I've ever gotten to do, but I think it really made me fall in love with dance. So it was a fortunate experience to start my Point Park journey right with that.
I remember you in those rehearsals.
Yeah, it was a stressful time.
Looking back, you seemed so small at the time. You did a good job though.
Thank you. Yeah, it was rough for me. Truthfully, it was. But I think I had such a limited knowledge to dance and what I was really getting myself into. I knew I loved it, but I don't think I knew anything about what this really entailed. So I feel so fortunate now. I feel like my love for dance is finally catching up to where everyone else is around me, because they've been doing it for so much longer than me. So I'm pretty fortunate with that. It's actually, I think 10 years officially with me dancing in this next year. So it's pretty exciting that it's all kind of worked out the way. Perseverance really does push you pretty far, I think. So
That's a great story. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I didn't realize that you hadn't been dancing much before you came to school. I remember you in summer dance, but I didn't realize that that was kind of where you got your start.
Yep, that was it.
So what did you do before that then? You must have done something physical. Were you an athlete or?
I played sports my whole life, but I'm from a family of four, so everyone else kind of loved the sports and I did them because I thought I had to. I did musical theater and I loved it, but I never quite had the singing voice that everyone else did. So I was like, oh, I don't really want to do that. I was a gymnast for years. Oh
no.
Oh no.
Back. Oh,
It is
all right.
bad.
Well, hopefully he'll be back. Maybe Caitlin can help us with that.
Right. That was Christopher Walken. He wanted to have a word with him.
Yeah. Right. Oh, she's on it. Okay. Perfect. Well, let's Amanda, you said you remembered Colin in those rehearsals.
Yeah, I did. Those understudies did have a very hard job. Kenny was in that piece too, right? We did that like
Yeah, we partnered together.
Yeah, we partnered together.
Yeah.
But those understudies did have a very hard job. They had to learn like 8 different parts and every show was cast differently. So I even remember like having to like review the show that we were doing that night because so many people were getting thrown in and out. It was a crazy learning experience. It was really fun. I loved him. He was great. But my favorite experience from Point Park was doing The Bench by Keisha, my sophomore year of school. I was just so honored to be cast in that role. And to this day, it's the only time that I've ever cried on stage. That closing show was just like so emotional and real. And I had never been in like such a like visceral acting and dance like role before. So it really got to me. I'll never forget it. I'm still very grateful that I got to do that. And just to be challenged in that way, I had never acted before, I've done a like theater production to that extent. And so it was really, really cool. Yeah. Oh, and then in terms of connections that helped me at Point Park, when I was a freshman, Annalie Trailer was a senior. And I didn't actually even work with her in school, but a year and a half or 2 years ago, she contacted me and she was choreographing this like contemporary ballet duet. And she asked me to do it. And I was like, what? This is so cool. I had never even worked with her. She just had known of me from Point Park. And she's this like insane choreographer that has like the most unique artistic voice. And she really challenges you in rehearsal to be like collaborative and move with her and like take an intent and roll with it and like partner with someone like in a genuine way. And so even up until like 2 years ago, I learned so much from her, and that connection came from Point Park. And I didn't even realize I was making that connection at the time. So I think it's really important to be hyper aware of how you're presenting yourself while you're in school, because you never know where your peers are going to end up and who's going to be behind the audition table. Yeah.
That's very good advice. Yes, absolutely. And I'm sure you all run into other Point Parkers all the time, you know, on the street, in a restaurant, you know, at an audition.
I couldn't afford before moving in with Amanda. And I was living in a 2-bedroom in Harlem. The pandemic hit, lost my job, lost any real source of income. And rent wasn't really relieved. So when my lease was up, I really felt like it wasn't financially, sound of me to renew it. And I was looking for somewhere to stay, and Amanda and our other roommate, Will, who also went to Point Park, needed a third roommate. And if it wasn't for them, because we've kept in contact from school, I don't know where I'd be living right now.
Well, that's an important connection, right? Just having a place to live. That's a huge connection right there. So glad you're back.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's the internet,
Well, yeah, that's Zoom for you.
That's right. That's right. The more we do this, the more we encounter glitches, but it's okay. So welcome back. Did you have anything else you wanted to say about your connections that you've made through Point Park, or your experience, happy experience, sad experience, fun experience?
I think I can definitely say with any connection, it's not just about Point Park, but for the dance world in general, everyone knows everyone somehow. So I think for anyone younger, or even sometimes as we get older, we have to sometimes separate personal things from our business world. And if you have a personal interaction with someone that has nothing to do with your workplace or how they are viewed in the dance world, then it's always better to be nicer or say less, I think, and be careful with that. I don't think I personally can think of an instance where I've done that, because I think I definitely learned at Point Park it's very small and you have to kind of be careful what you say or what you do. So I think it's so important to make those types of connections, right? So that way you can find a roommate or that type of thing, but also if anyone is ever looking for you for a job or that type of thing, you have someone to fall back on. So I think that's important.
Thank you so much for that. So we have our first, it's not really a question, but Mark Freeman is suggesting that we restage the bench every 3 or 4 years so that other students and their families, friends can have a chance to experience it. Amanda, would you mind just elaborating a little bit more about the bench? What it, like the story, it was a full length that we did, 2 acts. Tell us a little bit about the story and how it touched you.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, Keisha did a full length production. For the first time, it would have been in, let me see if I can do some quick. It was the year before it was my freshman year was the first year. So it was 2009 was the first rendition of the full length. And even just watching the show as a freshman, it was the most inspiring thing I've ever seen. Like the way Keisha like melded movement with theater and like sent this message was unbelievable. She is like a goddess in my eyes. And so the production is basically about a family, the trials and tribulations of like love, relationships, and having kids. And so like that deep, like visceral, like act of love transferring down from generations, like she told this like beautiful story. I can't do it justice just by like explaining it here, but it would be awesome if she could restage that. And I think she actually was trying to make it a Broadway production. I don't know where it stands now, but it would have obviously.
About 2 years ago, she came to New York with something. I
think you were.
I went to go see it. Yeah, she had partnered with the dance company that Nile Ruff is.
Was it Dallas Black?
Yes.
Dayton Contemporary, maybe.
Yeah.
And they used the cast or the company to sort of do their own rendition of the bench, but they incorporated live vocals and had some narrators, sort of like making it less dance theater and more actual musical theater, which I think was really successful. It was a large audience. Yeah.
And it was really cool to watch from a dancer perspective, seeing this transition to a more theatrical piece is really cool.
Very nice. Well, I guess it's similar to when they take a stage play and turn it into a film, that you see the evolution and what's possible there. So we have another brilliant question here from Barbara Houston. So she's asking, if you could give your younger pre-graduation self one piece of advice to prepare for entering the professional world, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good one. I want to start this one.
Okay.
Unless you wanted to direct it somewhere.
No.
You talked about connections, and I think the best decision I ever made in my life so far has been to go to college in general. But going to Point Park was very significant for me personally, because growing up both in Puerto Rico and in New Jersey, all of my peers, anyone that like did anything related to arts, whether it was dance or singing or acting. I was in a very small bubble. And going to Point Park, I was a minority there in terms of my race or being Hispanic, and there weren't and being a part of like not being far from my culture or from my home or anyone that was like me was really, really eye-opening and really helpful. It gave me a big slap in the face of like, there's so much more out there than what I knew in my like little hometown. Getting a chance to meet people that were different from me, artists that were from different backgrounds, dancers from all over the place to come together and train together in the same room was the biggest takeaway or learning experience for me that was tangible both as an artist and just in my everyday life. Because if I wasn't able to connect with people that were so different from me, I wouldn't have gained as much compassion for other artists, as much patience for different people. I think it helped me grow as a person and as an artist all in one. So like, as cheesy as that may sound, like going away to college and actually doing that, being the first of my brothers to like do that, it's something I'll never be able to like explain or pay back. It was such, again, the best decision I ever made. So the connecting with people in that kind of setting was life-changing for me.
I would agree. I think that like Point Park creates such like a safe and free space that it almost feels like this like escape for you. Like I remember coming from like a private Catholic all girls high school and then going to Point Park and feeling like I was finally home. Like it just feels safe. So I would like encourage students to take advantage of that and like take risks and like really focus on perfecting your craft, obviously, like your technique and like expanding your artistry, but also on like exploring yourself and like figuring out the person that you want to be. Like what person do you want to show up on stage, and like what person do you want to bring to the audition after you graduate, and like kind of like actively think about it every day and bring that version of yourself to class.
Right. When you watch a performer on stage as an audience member, I think, working on your craft is so important, and someone's technique or how much work they've put into that performance shows and will show. And that's obviously something as performers we can admire. But when you take two people who have put the same amount of time together and someone maybe stands out a little bit to you more than others, I think that little edge is when someone's able to put themselves into the work, when someone's able to put who they are and know who they are and be able to translate that through the work. That is the next level as a performer for me. And that is only comes with doing that kind of work that Amanda's talking about. Knowing yourself, taking those risks, finding out who you are. And in a setting like Point Park, it was kind of perfect to do that.
I like actively remember visualizing this like higher version of myself and then like actively trying to achieve that. Like you have to have like a clear vision of who you want to be, like you were saying, but it's okay to like actually like visualize it and then try to achieve it. That was really helpful for me. It still is.
That's fabulous. Good advice. Thank you. Anyone else have any comments about what they would tell themselves back 10 years ago before you were graduating?
I'll go next. I think my biggest piece of advice would be to be a sponge and absorb as much as possible. Point Park has so much to offer in terms of choreographers that they bring in, classes you can take, performances that you can see at the Biome. I think one of my biggest regrets is that, as Carlos mentioned earlier, Point Park offers a class called Singing for Dancers. And I never knew that I was going to get into musical theater when I moved to New York. But one of the first things that happened was I joined a show called Queen of the Night, and there was a couple agents there from an agency who asked if we could meet the following day. It was like my opening night performance, so I was so excited. And the following day, they were like, "Okay, we would love to work with you. Do you sing?" And I'm like, "No, I don't sing at all." And they were like, obviously for an agency, they would like to kind of make the most money off you. I hate to put it that way, but Broadway is the highest paying job in New York. So I wish I had started singing a little bit earlier, because once you move to the city, it's like you have so many bills to pay, and then then an agency that you just signed with wants you to take vocal lessons once a week. So I kind of learned my lesson the hard way. Like, you run out of money pretty quickly in the city. So, but I did take vocal lessons as much as I possibly could. And I was fortunate enough to be a part of my first musical ever, which was Christopher Wheelan's An American in Paris. I got to tour internationally with that show through China and Taiwan. So I just feel like going to Point Park, there was so much to take advantage of. And also, I think one of my favorite things was I had never been around that many male dancers at one time. And I feel like it gives you a good understanding of the process of auditioning for jobs in the city. You're going to have to face rejection at times, even if you feel like, I nailed that audition, I feel like I should have the part, but that's just not the way it goes a lot of times. And I feel like from dancing, from classes at 8 a.m. in the morning and rehearsals ending at 9 p.m., it really gives you an understanding of whether this industry is right for you or not. And you do feel going to school like you're in a bubble with these people, but it also is eye-opening when you move to a new city. You're like, oh yeah, I can pick up on that piece of choreography quick, or I could do this. And you feel like you're a well-rounded dancer. But I would like to think of myself now as more than just a dancer. Yeah, I would like to think of myself as, actor, singer, dancer. And that's the first thing that, like, if you sign with an agency, that's the first thing they're going to tell you. Say that you're a dancer last, just so that you can get that out of your head, because you're more than that. So yeah, take advantage of every single opportunity you possibly can. Don't say no to anyone if they offer students. They have a lot of student choreography shows. Say yes to everything, and then choreograph yourself. I wish I took more advantage of asking my friends to be in pieces, because I'm just now getting over the fear of choreographing. And I have to say that there's no reason to be afraid, especially if you're with a group of friends. And I wish I did that a little bit more. Like I said, it's like your days are so filled with dancing that you're like, sometimes it's the last thing you want to do. But I do wish I choreographed a little bit more, and just say yes to everyone who wants to have you in their piece, because it's an honor and it's a privilege.
Thank you, Kenny.
Yeah.
All right, Colin, any words of wisdom to your younger self pre-graduation?
I would say get your student loans in order, but that's my joking one first. That is the truth. I think that's important to kind of think about. But I think most importantly, I would tell myself to kind of get prepared. I think Point Park has such a great atmosphere and provided me so much. But the moment you kind of step out of those doors and you're in the dance world, you are just one of so many people. And you have to be so prepared in so many ways, mentally, physically, emotionally, for what kind of job this really is. And it's hard. I think we all could say that it's hard. Even in our best days, it's one of the hardest things. But I don't think we would do it if you don't wake up every day and love it and want it so bad. And I think through everything I learned at Point Park, I would want my younger self just to know that it's never gonna feel easy, and it always requires everything out of you to get the best result.
Thank you. Yeah, I always feel like dancers are eternally tired, hungry, and sore, right? Just always and forever, never stops. All right, well, we have another question here. This is from an anonymous viewer asking, what are you most excited to see happen in your field after quarantine lifts? So you each have a minute to answer this question. What are you the most excited to see happen in your field after the quarantine lifts?
I'll say something really quick, just
Okay.
it came to my mind. In my field, whether musical theater, dance, just in the performing world, I'm excited to see the racial movement that's been happening with Black Lives Matter, a bunch of like minorities and communities within the arts that have been sort of addressed in terms of musicals, storytelling, representation. I'm excited to see like how everything that's happened, all of the knowledge we're gaining, a lot of momentum that we're seeing change or eye-opening conversations that we've been having as artists, how that affects our industry, and what stories now can maybe be told that haven't yet. So yeah, I want to see that. I want to see better. I want us to do better.
Thank you.
I feel like over the past year, we've gone through so much, not only with the Black Lives Matter movement, but with the pandemic, like everything together. I think it's going to create this like artistic renaissance when everything does open back up. I'm really excited to like collaborate with people and like get back into the studio and like see what people have. I think that it's, you know, beautiful art will be produced from it.
Yes, I agree. I agree. How about you, Kenny? What are you looking forward to when the quarantine lifts?
I'm just excited in general for everything to be back to normal whenever that may be. But I have to say, I feel like Zoom kind of changed the game a little bit in terms of people that you can work with. Like you said, you were teaching students in Mexico, and you can work with people across the country, and you can audition for things that aren't in your current city. I teach at a studio, and people outside the studio are allowed to be on these Zoom calls with you, and they can test out whether they want to take class or not. And personally, for me, taking a Zoom class, if you don't feel that comfortable, you can turn your camera off, and that's fine. And you can, it's a lot less scary going into a Zoom dance class than say I wanted to take a hip hop class, which I don't really do hip hop. I like dancing hip hop, but I don't really want to go into a hip hop class. So I can take one on Zoom and feel fine about it and turn my camera off. So I guess just seeing like, also Amanda and I were part of a Nutcracker that was completely virtual. It was such a tiny space, but we had, I think like 5 or 6 cameras. We definitely needed like one more day of tech for everything to go smoothly, but definitely one more day. But seeing like how everything came together, it was really, really cool with like the backdrops that the choreographer was using. He had masks on us that were like changing colors. But there was a lot of like technological aspects of the show that were a part of it, which were really, really cool to see. So I guess just seeing how that can blend and fuse with everything that we're doing is really cool.
Awesome. And you, Colin?
I have been able to perform, but in the sense that when we were supposed to have live performances, we did a filming instead, and that was all we did. So it's so different when you go out on stage, and instead of seeing people look back at you, all I saw was one camera, and it's not the same. You don't really, performing in a ballet, I didn't get to actually be that character. I just felt like I was getting watched and filmed, and that was it. So I miss having live people watching you dance. I feel like that's one of the best parts of performing. You get to feed off their energy, and I miss that. It's not the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that everyone watching this call and on this call would say that we can't wait for this quarantine pandemic to be over, and so that we can all get back to doing what we love to do and being with friends. I can't wait to give hugs again, and see my family. I haven't seen them in a year. So it'll be nice to be able to just do all of those things again and not worry, not to have that sort of that stress about trying to stay safe and stay healthy and all of that. So looking forward to good days ahead, really good days ahead. But I guess we're out of time. So I'd just like to thank you all so much for being a part of our panel. It's so great to see you. I miss you terribly, but I'm so proud of your success, all of you doing different things, continued success, continued good health. And thank you for sharing with our current students some nice words of advice and some great tips. I'm sure they will take that to heart. So thank you again. And we'll see you hopefully soon. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hugs.
Thank you, Susan.
Hugs, hugs, hugs. Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you soon.